Hey guys, France here with Banana Fish Studio, and today I'm sharing how I make my paper and Funfoam full-size traveler's notebook cover. So let me begin by suggesting you create a template for yourself. That way you can get all of the measuring out of the way. Now you can feel free to hit pause on this diagram and just jot down the measurements. I based the size of my traveler's notebook cover on one of my favorite full-size covers, and I like it because it's really designed to accommodate multiple inserts. Once you figure out the construction of this traveler's notebook cover, then you could probably go ahead and adjust these measurements to fit whatever it is that you want to create. Now let's take a look at some of the items that I used in order to complete my traveler's notebook cover. So you're going to need a sheet of patterned paper, and you want that pattern paper to accommodate the measurements that you've chosen. So I'm using a 12 by 12 sheet of scrapbooking paper. You're also going to need a sheet of Funfoam, as well as a self-adhesive laminating sheet to cover and protect your patterned paper. Just so you know, I have listed the necessary items below in the video description, along with links to where I got those items. Now, you don't have to use the laminating sheet, but I would suggest using something to cover the paper. You could use clear contact paper as well. You're also going to need some elastic cording for the inner bands as well as the closure. A strong adhesive. I recommend double-sided tape. I'm using angel tape at the moment, but I've also used score tape and that red line tape as well, and they both work very well. In addition to that, you're going to need 5 1/8 inch eyelets, a 1/8 inch hole punch, a corner rounder or corner chomper that can go through several sheets of paper, some sort of eyelet setter or grommet setter, as well as something with which to cut. So whether you're using a pair of scissors or a craft knife, that would also be useful. Now I'm going to begin this process by removing the top portion of my laminating sheet and slowly adhering it to the piece of pattern paper that I've cut down. Now the piece of pattern paper I've cut down is actually slightly larger than my template, but the reason why I do that is so that I can trim down any little areas where the laminating sheet has sort of maybe overlapped, or if it's crooked along the edges. I wanted to allow myself a little bit of wiggle room. Now I take this step very slowly. I find that if I go slow and I sort of smooth things out as I go, I rarely end up with any ripples or bumps or air bubbles or anything like that. It's one of the reasons why I really like using the laminating sheets, because I find that the roll of clear contact paper is a little bit harder to maneuver and manage. Now I'm just smoothing everything out and making sure that there's a really nice adherence between the paper and the laminating sheet. Now the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to measure it with my template to see where I need to make some cuts. I know that I'm going to need to cut it a bit along the sides as well as along the top and bottom. And once again, that's the whole reason why I cut my pattern paper slightly larger, is so I would be able to do that and get a nice clean finish along all of the edges. Now that I've cut my paper down to size, I'm going to add my adhesive, paying extra special attention to the edges. The edges are the weak point in any of these covers, and once your edges begin to lift, the integrity of your entire book begins to break down. So I always try and pay special attention to the edges when I'm laying down my adhesive. Once again, I'm just using that super sticky double stick tape. You can find a link to where I got that tape in the video description below. Now I don't add as much adhesive to the center. I know that some people prefer to add more, some people prefer to add less. I think I'm somewhere in the middle. Not too much, not too little. Now I'm just going to go ahead and remove the backing from that tape. Just going to clean it up along the sides. Now that I have all of that backing removed, I can go ahead and adhere it directly to my Funfoam. And I'm not super accurate here, I just make sure that I get it in the center because I can easily cut off any excess. So once I've trimmed off all of the edges of Funfoam, I'm going to double check and make sure that I'm still in alignment with my template, and then I'm just going to mark the spots where I'm going to need to punch holes. Before I punch the holes, I'm going to use my corner chomper to round the corners of my notebook cover. Now you don't need to do this, but once again, talking about the integrity of your traveler's notebook cover, the ends are the first things that begin to sort of fall apart, especially the corners, and I find rounding the corners really help with that. Now I'm just using a regular 1/8 inch hole punch to punch the holes at the top and the bottom. You're going to need to use something different for that center hole, maybe an awl, just sort of stick it in there and wiggle it around. Now because I have this tool set, it's basically a very old Making Memories Anywhere hole punch and eyelet setter. It uses some sort of spring-loaded mechanism to help you punch the hole anywhere in the paper. I don't have to use my awl, but I've definitely used it before in a pinch when I couldn't find my tool set. So I went ahead and punched that hole, and I'm just using that awl to sort of poke the paper through because it was hanging a little bit. And now I'm going to pull out 5 little eyelets out of my little set there. That's like a multicolored metallic set. So it has bronze and copper and gold, but I use silver mostly. Now I'm just going to switch my attachment so that I have the correct eyelet setter, and I'm going to set all of those eyelets. Now, this is not something that you absolutely have to do, but once again, you know, we're working with paper and Funfoam. We're not working with leather. So I find that any ways in which I can reinforce this notebook cover is a good idea, and the eyelets are just another form of reinforcement. Now I'm going to take that 20-inch length of elastic cord and I'm going to string it through and tie it on the ends. Just tie it into a regular knot. Now I've made so many of these notebook covers, I already know what the tension should feel like, but if you haven't and you're not really sure how tight to make these, you could just slip a couple notebook inserts in there and get a feel for it that way. Once again, it's one of those things where you don't want it too tight and you don't want it too loose either. Just going to clip off the ends and make them even. Now before I string through my band for the closure, I have this little rectangular piece, and I'm just going to round the corners real quick and I'm going to punch some holes. But I use this little rectangular piece to protect the edges of my traveler's notebook cover. If you're using the band alone over and over again over time, the band begins to create an indentation in the edge of your notebook cover. And I use this little rectangular piece in order to avoid that. So I'm just going to string my elastic through there first, and then I'm going to string it through the center hole from the outside toward the inside of my notebook cover. Once I do that, I could take the loose pieces on the inside and begin to measure so I get it to the length that I want. I usually want it to sort of be brushing the very end of, or the very bottom of the notebook cover. That's really the only guide that I have. Obviously, it's going to depend on the size of your traveler's notebook cover, but this is what I do for this size. And then I just sort of continue to play around with it until I get it to the right length. Now, tying a very loose knot, I'm just going to wrap it around and get a feel for it. I like the way that looks, so now I can make that knot even stronger. Just going to clip off the ends. And now I'm going to test it out using a couple notebook inserts. So it definitely fits two very well. Now I'm going to use another 20-inch long band that I've knotted to attach two notebook covers together. And you can also do this on the other side as well. Slip that in. And I like the way those all fit. I'm just going to wrap my closure around, and I'm good to go. That is how I make my paper and Funfoam traveler's notebook covers. Pretty simple. Thank you so much for watching.